Okay, right. What is secant the reciprocal of?
Cosine.
Cosine.
Is it test?
What is tangent the reciprocal of? This is a review.
Cotangent. Cot.
Whoops. I meant to start with cotangent. We don't need to know this, but we could also say tangent equals 1 over cotangent, or sine equals 1 over cosecant, that stuff. The second box on page 317, the relationships with negatives, you can just take a peek at that. I'm not going to write all that stuff down. They are a little bit different, like cosine and secant. If you put a negative angle, they're still equal to the positive angle. Anyway, just note that that's there. Now the bottom thing is the most important thing on this page. And so the Pythagorean relationships, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared thing. So this one is used a lot on these things. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. But it doesn't always look like this. Sometimes it looks like this. Okay. These are the same thing, right? I just basically subtracted cosine squared.
And this is new stuff?
This is new stuff, yeah. Or it could look different than this too. It could be like sine squared minus 1 equals cosine squared. You guys see what I'm saying here? All of this there's just a bunch of ways to mix and match. Like maybe this is on the left and this is on the right, this is on the left. These are all just saying the same thing in different order, basically. So we need to recognize anytime you see like a sine squared plus cosine squared, or sine squared minus 1, or cosine squared minus 1, it's going to be one of these relationships. Like if it was cosine squared minus 1, like if we minus this one over and subtract this over, that would equal negative sine squared.
Whoa.
So anyway, they only wrote this one down. That's like the starting point. Okay, and then there's 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared. That last one was the most important one, but whoa. This will show up some too. Josh, sit up.
I'm dead.
Okay, if you look on the bottom of page 318, there's one more table. And this is why they paired up sine and cosine and secant and cosecant. It's not based off the reciprocal, it's based off of sine is like 90 degrees ahead of cosine. Something like that, you can think of it. Everything that happens on sine happens on cosine, but 90 degrees later. That's kind of what that's saying. It doesn't really matter if you understand, you just need to know that that table is at the bottom of page 318. You guys got it? Sine and cosine are 90 degrees off. Tangent, cotangent, 90 degrees off. Secant, cosecant, 90 degrees off. That's...
That's a co-function relationship.
Yes. So if you ever see 90 minus theta, that's the table you need to go back and look at.
So we're doing Pythagorean relationships and then...
Well, we're doing all those things. We are simplifying trigonometric expressions is what we are doing.
What do you mean?
Trigonometric means trigonometry, it's the adjective form. Like the sine, cosine, tangent stuff we're doing relationship. Page 321, 1 through 18 is our goal. Page all today, one day assignment.
So realistically, we're getting
Today.
1 through 7.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is not as hard as the last one.
If Bethany doesn't talk, we can probably get 3 full
There are
problems.
A, B's, and C's all the way till 6.
Bethany, feel free to ask as many questions as you
Except not actually. Except lead us on the Pathfinder after school.
Hey.
I'm putting money on Bethany. Alright.
Me too.
Number 1A, cosine squared plus sine squared. What does that simplify to? 1, yes. So 1A is 1.
Thanks, Daddy. Yeah. And 1A1.
Yes.
Let's go home.
B, if we multiplied 1 minus cosine times 1 plus cosine together, what would we get?
1. Negative 1. 1 times -1 is -1.
So it's going to be 1 plus cosine squared. 1 minus cosine squared.
That's right. It's a FOIL problem, but since they're conjugates, the outside and inside cancel out. So if you FOIL the first, 1 times 1 is 1. The last is negative cosine squared.
Which is just sine squared. Right?
Okay, let me go back to that.
There's just a lot of rules.
Okay. What does 1 minus cosine squared equal? If I
Sine squared.
Right, if I subtract the cosine squared over, 1 minus cosine squared is equal to sine squared.
Okay.
So sine squared would be the simplest answer.
The simplest word.
Simplistic.
Isn't it most simple? The
So
most
the
simple.
answer is sine squared.
Yes.
Now we're on
This
C.
is we're using the formula they gave us on the bottom of page
3, 7, 18.
318, yeah. Or was it 18?
I don't
Yeah,
think I'm
it was
gonna
317,
remember
bottom
all
of
of these
317.
rules, so
Oh.
I-
Okay, the only ones that I expect you have memorized are sine, cosecant, secant, cosine, and this one. The rest of them I'm not gonna have you. But you need to know how to use it for this too, though.
Well, I don't know the tangent rules and the secant.
We have tangent rules?
Yeah, you don't have to have it. I'm saying you don't have to have it memorized on those, but
Like,
we do have to use it on some of the problems today. You just have to flip back and look at it.
okay.
All right. C. What is sine minus 1 times sine plus 1?
Sine squared minus 1.
Sine squared minus 1. It's a FOIL problem, but really, because they're conjugates, the outside and inside would cancel out if you FOILed. So really, it's just the first, sine times sine is sine squared, plus the last, 1 times -1 is -1.
Negative cosine squared.
Maybe I should, yeah, it is negative cosine squared. Did I write that down? Let me just put.
You did?
When I was writing different versions of the sine squared plus cosine squared, that was probably one of them I wrote. I was just making stuff up, but, so kind of what happened is if you subtract the 1 over and then subtract the cosine squared over, you get sine squared minus 1 equals cosine squared. Or sorry, negative cosine squared. You subtract this over. So anyway, it's negative cosine squared theta. Number 3, 1 plus cotangent squared. All right, cotangent squared is not one of those. So we need to flip back in our books to the bottom of page 317. You guys see?
What these in the 1 plus cotangent?
No, it's not a calculator problem. What's 1 plus cotangent squared equal?
Cosecant.
Cosecant squared. It's the bottom right corner of page 317. So just write cosecant squared of A. There's supposed to be an A on that one. What is cosecant A minus 1 times cosecant A plus 1? What is cosecant times cosecant?
Cosecant squared.
Cosecant squared. What's positive 1 times negative 1?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So that FOILs to cosecant squared minus 1. Okay. How can I transform this equation? This is one of the this is off of page 317 also. If I subtract this 1 over cosecant minus 1, cosecant squared minus 1 equals cotangent squared. So 3b is cotangent squared. A, they're using capital A for the angle.
Cotangent squared A, you said?
Yes. They're using A instead of theta. Yes, it is positive. You guys see where I got that from?
What was
This
A?
is the equation they gave us. If you subtract the 1 over, cotangent squared equals cosecant squared minus 1. When you FOIL that 3b, this is what we got, cosecant squared minus 1. So the answer is cotangent squared, except for with an
What about 3A, sorry, I was paying
3a, the answer is in the bottom right corner, page 317. 3c.
What happened to the middle schoolers that were in that room?
They switched hours. They come 7 and 8 hour now instead of 6 and 7. 1 over sine squared minus 1. What's the rules when you're adding and subtracting fractions? Oops, that's not tangent, was it? Yeah, it was tangent. Ooh.
I'm teaching a 7th grader.
Okay. What about it?
It's really complicated for her to do the common denominator.
Oh, right. That's what you said. Okay.
It is.
Okay, this is, sorry guys, I just remembered. This is one of the things that we didn't put in the table, but we're going to need it.
Can you put it on the board?
Right here. Tangent, right, if this isn't written in your books, I would write it somewhere in there, next to those tables.
Sine over cosine.
Sine over cosine. Somebody wrote it in your book.
Yeah.
Tangent is the same thing as sine over cosine.
Oh, that is new.
Yes, that is new. And I don't think they wrote it down anywhere as far as I know. So I've told people in the past, just write it in your book. Or maybe if you take notes somewhere, maybe put it there. They maybe wrote it somewhere, I don't know where. Okay. Okay, here's the thing. So, if tangent is sine over cosine, actually, this would be cosecant squared minus cotangent squared. Is that one of them? Yeah. Yeah, let's not use this yet. We'll save that, buddy, for later. Maybe that was needed for the next lesson. We don't need that yet. Okay, 1 over sine is the same thing as what? Cosecant. So this is cosecant squared, right here. And 1 over tangent is the same thing as what?
Cotangent.
Alright. You guys remember where we saw this before?
No.
Something like it? Right here, the bottom of 317. So, how can I turn that into cosecant squared minus cotangent?
You said track 1.
No, you subtract cotangent.
Subtract cotangent squared, that equals 1.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
That is crazy, bro.
That's like mad crazy.
Alright. 5A.
But it is what we need. That hurts.
Gosh, it's
Wait, so
long.
the error is just 1?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it hurts.
Okay, on 5A, do you guys remember where we saw cotangent of 90 minus theta? On the bottom of page 318. Bottom of 318. What is cotangent of 90 minus theta the same thing as?
Tangent.
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 So that's basically how it's going to go. Cotangent with tangent, secant with cosecant, sine with cosine. The co means with, so they're kind of good together. Anyway, on number 5A, cotangent 90 minus theta is going to turn into tangent. So we have to do cosine times, times tangent.
What?
Okay,
I got it.
tangent, however, basically if you're not sure what to do, here's a good rule of thumb. Turn everything into sine and cosine, if you can. What did I say tangent was equal to?
Sine
One.
over cosine.
Sine over cosine. So we're doing cosine, I'm not writing the theta or anything in here, times sine over cosine.
Cosine cancel
The
out.
cosines cancel out, so that would just be equal to sine
Okay. So the answer is sine?
theta.
So that means cosine times tangent is sine.
Cosine
So
times
90
tangent
minus
is the same
theta
thing as
is
sine.
literally like saying the opposite. Like,
It's the co one, yeah.
Yeah.
If they do tangent 90 minus theta, that'd be cotangent, or whatever.
they do like cosine minus theta. It's secant.
Sine.
I get with that.
It's sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, cosecant.
I get
Yeah.
that.
I don't know.
That's where the co thing came from. Anyway, 5b, 1 minus cosine squared. Okay. There's more than one way to do this, so I'm kind of wondering what's the easiest way. What's 1 minus cosine squared the same thing as?
Yeah.
1 minus cosine squared, let's see. 1 minus cosine squared would equal what? Sine squared. So let's just rewrite that sine squared. So we got cosecant squared times sine squared. I'm on 5b, did you guys know that?
No.
Cosecant squared times sine squared.
Okay, cosecant, what's another way to write cosecant?
Negative cosecant.
1 over sine.
1 over sine. So this is 1 over sine squared times sine squared,
Which is what?
which is 1.
Why did you multiply it by sine squared?
Because when it said, on 5b it said 1 minus cosine squared, I replaced that with sine squared. 1 minus cosine squared is the same thing as sine squared.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how to do it.
Okay, 5c, where are we at? Cosecant minus cosecant. Okay, secant, let's write secant as its reciprocal. What's the reciprocal for secant?
1 over cosine.
1 over cosine. So we're doing cosine times 1 over cosine minus cosine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the simplified version. I didn't put my thetas in there, I'm just kind of skipping that part. What do you guys think we should do next?
Distribute.
Distribute. What's that?
So we 1 minus cosine squared.
Yes. That times that is 1, because the cosines cancel out. Remember, this is like cosine over 1, so the cosines cancel out. That times that is just cosine squared.
That's one of the other.
1 minus cosine squared is equal to
Negative sin. Sin.
sine squared. Yeah. 1 minus cosine squared equals sine squared. So it's sine squared.
Isa!
I think Isa has a calculator. That feels very. Give me back. I'm holding it right here for you.
Brady was retrieving it from the bathroom. That's all.
We're talking about the
This is C?
Brady was getting on.
That was 5C.
It was.
It's supposed to be a theta on that one.
Will you count on or you don't have to?
Depends on how grumpy I am.
Are you grumpy?
I'm not grading it right now.
So sometimes it's theta and sometimes it's A.
Whatever letter they use is the letter we use. Okay,
You never know.
number 7. There's only one on these, so this should go a little quicker.
Wait,
Okay.
what was, oh, it's sine squared?
Sine times tangent.
Is equal to
One.
cosine.
Okay, no. What was
1
tangent?
over cosine.
Okay, what was tangent in terms of sine and cosine?
Sine over cosine.
Sine over cosine. So what is sine times sine over
squared
cosine?
cosine.
Yes, sine squared over cosine. Okay. We'll keep it like that for now. And
Oh, and
then
then the code of.
plus, what's sine of 90 minus
Cosine.
cosine?
How? Why?
What is the
Where?
purpose?
That, Brady, that is on the bottom, the table on the bottom of page 318.
Three.
What is the
Wait.
purpose of these equations?
Yeah.
Simplifying, I don't know.
No, but like, why do these exist?
Sine, cosine, tangent.
Like the different like relationships.
Oh.
They're used to like find missing parts on a triangle. They used to use it for like
This is
navigating
all
ships and
work
stuff.
To find
Like,
stuff with a triangle.
You know, just for like the Bermuda
That's literally all this is about.
no, not that. Like, you could figure out where you are with like looking at stars in the sky. And,
Sailors use this?
yeah, sure.
Basically,
Well,
basically you used to be able to triangulate your position based off.
triangulate your position, yes.
Basically off
With
the
the
triangle
stars.
of which you came off land here, how far you would go, so you have like this side and this angle, and then. Like based on the star map.
Okay, anyways, let's get back to it.
Weird, those are, you use the star at this point and this point.
Oh, I forgot to write this.
So it's like a. Oh.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
like,
no,
like we always like
Alright,
try to
shh,
like,
guys,
and
hey,
do this and this.
Jackson.
The
So-
cosines,
I don't-
they mark out.
No, that's with multiplying, not with adding.
Um,
With adding, we need a common denominator. So I need to turn this into a cosine. But
Multiply by cosine.
if you multiply by cosine, that becomes cosine, that becomes cosine squared.
oh.
So the top becomes sine squared plus cosine squared
Over cosine.
over cosine.
Square equals 1.
Okay, what is sine squared plus cosine squared?
One. Oh, hold.
1.
1.
That's right here, if you forgot it.
Oh.
This is our basic one.
Which one equals
1 over
two?
cosine.
Oh.
Okay, there's
Which is-
there's an easier way of writing 1 over cosine now.
Oh, cosecant. Wait,
Secant.
secant.
You were so.
I think, is this a theta question probably?
Yeah.
Most
No,
likely.
it's not, it's not.
It's
A.
A, it's an A.
So we do all this in the
Brady,
These
stop
answers.
dying.
Yes.
Not a fan.
For what in life?
To simplify it, I don't know about that.
I kind
If you want to be a math teacher, Nevada.
Okay, number 9.
I can see the video as
If we
No,
foil those
no
two,
teacher.
hey, if we foil those two together, what would we get? What's the first gonna be?
Secant b squared and the last
Secant
one would
squared
be
of B
tangent b squared.
minus tangent squared of B. Whoops, forgot my pen. Alright, have we seen a function with secant squared minus tangent squared? On the bottom of page 317, we haven't used that one yet, but it says 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared. Let's mark that off.
So it's 1.
That's the one we haven't used yet. So yeah, secant squared minus tangent squared equals 1. Geez, I think that was number 9, right?
It's weird.
Number 11.
Wait,
Just one.
it's just 1?
Yep, right here.
Can we go to
Secant squared minus tangent squared equals 1. Number 11, cosecant minus cotangent times secant plus tangent. Should we do that
Let's turn
foil?
everything into.
We could do sine and cosine. That might be the easiest way to. What's cosecant in terms of sine or cosine? 1 over sine. What is cotangent in terms of sine and cosine?
Oh, 1 over tangent.
Okay, but what
Sine over cosine, but.
tangent was sine over cosine, so guess what cotangent is?
Cosine over sine.
Cosine over sine.
I am
They
so
have a
glad.
I'm not 100% sure I'm doing this the easiest way. We might have, maybe foiling at the start is easier. This might be it though. Secant, what is that in terms of sine and cosine? first parentheses simplify.
81
1 minus cosine over sine. The second one needs a common denominator. So I'm going to turn 1 into cosine over cosine. Just multiply top and bottom by 1. So that is 1 plus cosine. Over cosine.
Wait, what?
This was a 1 out here,
Uh-huh.
which is like 1 over 1, which is like cosine over cosine.
My hands smell like berries.
Okay, what's the top going to be if I multiply these two together? What's the top?
Negative 1.
Okay, it's a
Cosine
four-
squared minus 1.
It's, no, 1 minus cosine squared. If I FOIL the top, top times top, it's 1 minus cosine squared. What's the bottom?
Sine times cosine.
Okay, what's 1 minus cosine squared simplify to?
Sine squared.
Sine squared. So what does sine squared over sine cosine simplify? How's that simplify?
Sine over cosine.
Sine over
Cosine.
cosine. Because this one of the sines cancels out. It's kind of like x squared divided by x. One of the x's cancels out.
Is tangent.
Wait a minute, there's like 3 numbers on the board. When did we start
Wait,
doing?
where do we get,
algebra?
how do we get to,
Not
from
algebra,
1
when
minus
did we start
cosine
doing English?
over sine
This
cosine
is,
to the one below?
Okay, all I did was I changed the top into sine squared.
I'm not from this country and expect to
Oh, okay.
Where are the numbers, Josh?
there are none.
What is?
This was tangent of x.
What is sine equal?
Self, I don't know.
It's not equal
Josh,
to
where
a
are the
number,
numbers?
like pi?
Sine is not a value, it's a function. You feed the functions an angle and it spits out a ratio. Basically, the ratio is the sides of a right triangle.
All of this is about us being right.
Tangent x.
Well, you can use it for more than right triangles, but that's the basic idea. Okay, 13.
There's not a right
Okay.
triangle below.
On 13, the denominator is 1 minus cosine squared. What is that's sine squared? So it's sine cosine over sine squared. It's kind of like the last one, right? How does that reduce?
Sine times cosine is something.
To sine.
Okay,
Oh, no, no.
the sine
So it's cosine.
and one of these signs, or I should have just crossed out the 2, cancel out. So it's cosine over sine
Just tangent.
Wait.
and
No?
Cotangent.
Cotangent.
Why is it cosine over
Yo.
did I write it wrong?
cosine? Yeah.
Sine cosine over, oh,
What?
1 minus cosine squared, we talked about it, you might have missed it, but 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared.
Oh, okay. I didn't write the squared then.
I mean, cut.
So it's just cotangent x.
Equals cotangent of x. Cos.
Huh?
Oh, the first one is 1.
Where are you writing that?
I did, Mr. Gordon.
Huh?
On 15, the first one is 1.
I feel like on this.
Wait,
First
what?
part is 1?
You know what I
Yeah.
just told you?
No, it's not, that's not the same thing as sine squared plus cosine squared.
Wow.
It'd be sine squared plus 2 cosine, sine cosine
replaying
plus
that.
cosine squared.
Fuck.
What?
What?
What was
Alright, yeah, 15, that is a doozy.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
It's not
Skid.
bad.
Skid.
You just get that
Okay.
one.
You guys know how to simplify cosine plus, or sine plus cosine squared?
No.
Okay, you would have to FOIL it, and it's not the easy FOIL where they're conjugates and the outside inside cancels out. It'd be,
No, it's sine plus sine minus, right?
I use force.
well, actually we could use a trick on that. That's probably the easier way, but the less intuitive way. Okay, but it's not just this times that, it's,
Squared.
This squared. So, here's one. Here's one thing that we could do though.
Foil.
This will make it easier. So basically there's 2 of these and 2 of these. But because order of multiplication does not matter,
Wait,
we can do 1 of these times 1 of these times 1 of these times 1 of these. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we can just do one of these at a time. The order of multiplication doesn't matter. It's just 2 of these multiplied to 2 of these. So I'm gonna just start with 1 of these and 1 of these because they're conjugates, which makes foiling much easier. You guys know what I mean? I keep saying conjugates. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
1 plus, 1 minus, otherwise identical. When you foil, everything cancels out except for the first and the last.
Uh-huh.
What's the first if I multiply these together?
Sine
Sine squared.
minus
What's the
cosine.
last? Cosine squared. So,
You have 2 of those, right? And then you multiply them together.
It is negative.
what's sine squared minus cosine
Oh, of
squared?
course.
That's not one of them.
Wait, yeah, this is.
No, it's sine squared plus cosine
Because
squared.
that would be negative.
So
sine
2
squared.
sine squared minus
Dang
2
it.
cosine squared.
You thought you were gonna do a slick trick here.
Yeah,
It didn't work.
didn't help.
We can go try another one.
Oh, we have 2 pairs of those, right?
Yeah.
I'm missing something.
I'm
Sine to the 4th plus
What are
cosine
you
to the 4th,
I don't know.
which equals.
What if we did it the other way?
2 sine squared
Did I copy it right?
2 cosine squared.
Oh, it's not times, darn it.
It's not?
It's adding.
Son of a nut.
Aw, you tricky trickster.
That was awful.
That's a tricky trick.
Well, there's a reason it wasn't working out. Okay, if I foil this thing times itself. Okay, the first would still be sine squared, but on the outside, it would be sine cosine, the inside would be sine cosine, and those don't cancel out. So we have 2 sine cosines,
Ew.
and then the last would be cosine squared. Kind of like the last one. Okay, the outside is sine cosine.
Gotcha.
The inside is sine cosine.
Gotcha.
Those added together makes 2 sine cosine. Plus the right side squared. Almost identical on the right side, but what's going to be different?
In the middle.
It's on the
Right, the middle would be minus 2 sine cosine if I foiled that one.
I'm so not confused.
You're not confused at all.
Nope.
I don't
I
want
just
to.
don't know
I don't want to
why.
spend 10 minutes foiling. I hope you guys kind of understand the idea, but the first is sine squared, the outside is sine cosine, the
Where's
inside
that
is sine
negative
cosine. There, drew that wrong. That makes 2 of them. The other one's almost identical except for there's a negative, so it makes a negative 2. If I add all this stuff together, what do I get?
Double.
Hopefully the answer.
I get 2 sine squared plus what goes right here.
Oh, that cancels.
Cancels. Plus
Cosine.
2 cosine squared.
Oh, wait, hold up.
Okay.
You can do the thing.
Oh!
Wait,
Oh!
yes,
Oh,
yes,
the thing. Let's do that thing.
Why did I?
Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1.
Wait, how did I get 2?
But there's 2 of them, so it's 2.
You're right.
What?
So
We
sine
did the thing.
squared,
Let's go.
sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1.
Oh, gotcha.
But there's 2 of
No,
them,
we
so
did
it
the
equals
wrong
2.
How does that work?
Are we
Is
still
my
going
brain
at
messed up?
18?
Nice.
Well, I just, yeah, we got one more.
Want to get drunk?
That is not.
So you're gonna give us all this homework? I will say, there's no way I'm going to understand this.
All right, let's try 16. We'll stop here.
Get sober.
Why?
For the
Why?
record, 16 is the last one we have.
Sobriety.
Yes, I said 16.
Alright.
Make sure he doesn't change it up on us again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Jordan.